At 1:13 a.m., the house looked innocent. A dim nightlight bled into the hallway. The dishwasher hummed like a tired insect. Somewhere outside, a cicada buzzed and stopped and buzzed again, like it couldn't decide whether to keep living. Nathan Rowe stood barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, holding an iPad that wasn't his. It had been propped on the couch arm like it always was, shared device, shared calendar, shared grocery list, shared life. Only this time the screen wasn't showing wedding seating charts or flower invoices. It was open to a document titled Chapter 1, Us. The file was long enough that the scroll bar looked like a splinter. Hundreds of pages. Paragraphs stacked on paragraphs. Dialogue. Scene descriptions. Even little italicized thoughts, like a book was happening inside his living room without his permission. From the hallway came the soft sound of Ally humming to herself in the shower. She always did that when she was relaxed, little songs, half-remembered lyrics, a private concert for the steam. Nate's thumb moved without asking him. The document jumped to a section labeled Chapter 9. Liam, you don't have to marry him. Not like that. Not like you're being handed over. Ally, he's good. That's the problem. He's so good it makes me feel trapped in a story I didn't write. Liam, then write a different one. Write us. Ally, I shouldn't. Liam, you already are. Nate's throat tightened so hard it felt like he'd swallowed a fist. A line below that, Liam, whoever the hell Liam was, had typed something that made Nate's ears ring. I can still taste you. The shower shut off. Water stopped. A towel rustled. Ally's humming drifted into a quiet little silence like nothing in the world had changed. Nate stared at the iPad until the screen dimmed and his reflection surfaced. 33 years old, public high school history teacher, assistant coach on Fridays, a man who graded essays with a red pen and believed in doing things the right way even when the right way took longer. He didn't feel like a man in that moment. He felt like a house that had just realized it was built on sand. And somewhere deep in his chest, beneath the shock, a cold plan began to form, one that didn't involve screaming or throwing things or begging for the truth. A plan to show the truth at the last possible moment. A plan that would leave no room for it to be twisted. A plan that would make every lie collapse under the weight of its own words. In Raleigh, late summer smelled like cut grass and hot asphalt and the sweet rot of magnolia petals. Everything was green, everything was sticky, everything felt like it was building towards something. For Nate and Ally, that something was October 12th. They'd been together 4 years. Engaged for 1. The courthouse marriage had happened quietly in May, no dress, no guests, just a judge in a bland room and 2 signatures, because Ally's health insurance through her nonprofit job was shaky and Nate's teacher benefits were solid. They told themselves the real wedding was still the real wedding. The big one. The one with family, the one with the barn venue out near Chapel Hill, the one with string lights and a DJ and the seating chart that Ally kept rewriting like the fate of nations depended on where Aunt Denise sat. Nate loved Ally's energy. It was part of why he'd fallen for her. She was the kind of person who made lists, who color-coded her calendar, who could talk to strangers like they were old friends. She also had an anxious streak that came out when she wanted something badly. And she wanted graduate school badly. Social work. UNC. A pivot toward work that felt bigger than spreadsheets and donor emails. Ally had been studying for months, flashcards on the coffee table, highlighters bleeding through notebooks, practice tests spread across the kitchen counter like crime scene photos. At first, Nate thought it was sweet. He'd bring her tea. Quiz her while he made dinner. Tell her she was smarter than she gave herself credit for. But in July, Ally said she needed extra help. A tutor, she said, almost apologetic. Just for the math stuff. I freeze up. Nate's first instinct was to offer. He taught teenagers for a living. He coached football. He could explain anything if he had a whiteboard. But Ally shook her head quickly. It's different when it's you, she said. I get embarrassed. Like I'm disappointing you. That stung in a quiet way, but Nate didn't argue. He wanted her to succeed. If paying someone a couple $100 meant she'd walk into that test room confident, so be it. She found the tutor online. A private GRE prep guy, local, flexible, story-based learning, whatever that meant. His name was Liam Keane. Ally mentioned him the way people mention a new brand of protein powder. Casual. Not important. Just a tool. First sessions at this coffee shop by NC State, she said. It's public, don't worry. Nate hadn't been worried, at least, not then. The early signs of trouble didn't arrive like a siren. They arrived like paper cuts. Ally started keeping her phone face down. She'd step into the laundry room to take calls. She'd smile at texts she didn't explain, then tuck the smile away when she noticed Nate watching. When Nate asked how tutoring was going, Ally's answers became strangely vague. It's good, she'd say. He's helpful. Or, he explains it differently. Or, it's nice having someone who doesn't see me as a project. That last one sat in Nate's head for days. He told himself he was overthinking it. Weddings made people weird. Stress made people weird. Grad school made people weird. Still, sometimes, late at night, Ally would be typing on her laptop with the brightness turned down. And when Nate would come into the room, she'd click away so fast it was like she'd been caught looking at something she shouldn't. Nothing, she'd say too quickly. Just emails. Nate wanted to believe her. He wanted to be the kind of man who didn't police his wife's scream. But the paper cuts kept coming. The first real crack showed up in a place Nate trusted, a shared account. They used a joint laptop for bills and a joint iPad for wedding planning. Ally liked the iPad because she could drag and drop seating charts with her finger. Nate liked it because it was simple. One Tuesday afternoon in late August, Nate sat at the kitchen table with a stack of quizzes to grade and the iPad beside him, open to the venue's payment schedule. A notification slid across the top of the screen. Liam K., I rewrote it. It's better now. You'll feel it. Nate's pen paused over a student's half-finished paragraph about the New Deal. He stared at the notification like it was written in another language. I rewrote it. The tutoring was math. What, exactly, was Liam rewriting? Nate clicked the notification before he could talk himself out of it. The iPad opened a messaging app that Ally had logged into. And there it was, weeks of messages, dense and intimate, not at all like, hey, can we reschedule Tuesday? It wasn't just flirtation. It was writing. Long blocks of text. Scene setting. Little jokes. Running metaphors. Inside language. A whole private world built word by word while Nate cooked dinners and paid deposits and said, I'm proud of you, babe, like a man who belonged in his own marriage. Nate scrolled until he found something earlier, something that showed how it started. Ally, sorry, I'm seriously bad at this. Like embarrassingly bad. Liam, then we start with the basics. No shame. We build. Ally, you're patient. Liam, I'm interested. A few days later. Ally, Nate keeps saying I'll do great. I wish I felt that. Liam, you don't need his belief. You need your own. Ally, it's easy to feel brave when I'm talking to you. And then, like watching a slow slide into a ditch, messages turned into paragraphs, paragraphs turned into chapters, and chapters turned into the kind of intimacy that made Nate's skin crawl. The evidence wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just, I like talking to you. There were references to places. Same booth as last time. I still have your lipstick on my collar. Stop wearing that perfume if you're trying to be good. Nate's hand started shaking. Not dramatic shaking, just enough that his pen made little jagged marks on the paper. He tried to stop reading. He couldn't. He scrolled until he found the file, shared through a cloud link, where they had apparently been writing their novel together, a romantic story with thinly veiled versions of themselves, except the story kept slipping into real life in a way that made it obvious it wasn't just fantasy. Ally's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Nate snapped the iPad screen off and stood up too fast, bumping the chair. Ally came into the kitchen in leggings and an oversized t-shirt, hair in a messy bun, the face of a woman thinking about dinner and deadlines, not betrayal. "Hey," she said, leaning in to kiss him. Nate turned his head at the last second so her lips hit his cheek. She blinked. "You okay?" "Yeah," he lied, because his mouth didn't know how to do anything else yet. "Just, tired." Ally studied him for a beat, then looked away, casual again. "I'm gonna shower," she said. "Can you start the pasta?" Nate watched her walk out of the room like she wasn't carrying a secret big enough to crush them both. He waited until the bathroom fan turned on. Then he turned the iPad back on. And kept reading. That was the moment the affair stopped being a fear and became a fact. Nate didn't confront Ally immediately. Not because he was scared of her. Because he was scared of what he would become if he did it without a plan. He spent 2 days moving through his life like a man underwater. He went to school. He taught about Reconstruction. He smiled at colleagues. He came home. He asked about her day. He nodded at wedding emails. He kissed her forehead goodnight while his stomach turned. By Thursday, the pressure inside him felt like it would split his ribs. Ally was in the living room, laptop open, flipping between a Pinterest board and an Excel sheet. "Babe," she said brightly, "if we move Grandma June to table 6, we can fit the Thompsons near the dance floor." "Ally," Nate cut in. His voice came out too flat. She looked up. Her smile faltered. "What?" Nate stood in front of her, hands at his sides, trying to keep them from shaking. "How's Liam?" he asked. Ally's eyes flicked, just a flicker, toward the laptop screen. Then back to him. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Nate said carefully, "how's your tutor?" Relief washed across her face too fast, too rehearsed. "Oh. Fine. Good. We're making progress." Nate nodded once. "Cool. Because I saw your messages." The room changed. Not in a supernatural way, just in a human way. Like the air thickened. Like the walls leaned in. Ally's mouth opened, then closed. "What messages?" Nate didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "The ones on the iPad," he said. "The ones where he rewrote it and you felt it. The ones where you talk about lipstick on collars and perfume man." Ally stood up so fast the laptop nearly slid off the couch cushion. "Nate, what the hell," she snapped. "Why are you going through my stuff?" Nate stared at her. "Why are you writing love stories with another man?" Ally's face flushed, anger first, not guilt. That told Nate something he didn't want to know. "It's not," she started, then stopped, as if she'd caught herself about to say a line that sounded ridiculous even in her own head. Nate waited. Ally crossed her arms. "It's not what you think." There it was. The oldest sentence in the cheating handbook. Nate let out a single, humorless laugh. "Okay. Then tell me what it is." Ally's eyes shined, not with tears yet, but with irritation. "He's helping me study. By telling you he can taste you." Ally's jaw tightened. "That's," she stammered. It's writing. It's a metaphor." "A metaphor for what?" Nate asked, voice still eerily calm. "Your mouth." Ally's breath came fast. "You're being disgusting." Nate's calm finally cracked. Not into screaming, into a low, sharp edge. "I'm being disgusting," he repeated. I'm standing in my own house reading 100 pages of you falling in love with somebody else and I'm the disgusting one. Ally's eyes darted around like she wanted an escape route. Okay, she said finally, softer. Okay. It got intense. Nate waited, forcing himself not to fill the silence with guesses. Ally rubbed her forehead. It was stupid. It was a distraction. I'm stressed. The wedding, grad school, everything. So you made a whole second relationship, Nate said. It wasn't a relationship, Ally insisted quickly. It was, talking. It was writing. It was, feeling seen. Nate's stomach turned at that phrase. You're married to me, he said, voice quieter now. You're supposed to be seen here. Ally's eyes finally watered. I didn't mean for it to go there, she whispered. It just, started with help. Nate nodded slowly. And then it became a novel. Ally flinched like he'd slapped her. It wasn't physical, she said quickly. Too quickly. I swear to God, Nate. It wasn't. Don't, Nate said. Don't swear to God while you're standing in front of me with his words in your phone. Ally's tears fell then, but they didn't move Nate the way they used to. Please, she whispered. Please don't do this right now. We have so much going on. Nate looked at her for a long time. What do you want, he asked, from me? Right now. In this moment. Ally wiped her cheeks. I want you to trust me. Nate almost smiled. Almost. That's a crazy thing to ask, he said softly, when trust is the one thing you just set on fire. That night, Nate slept on the couch. Not out of spite. Because he couldn't stand the idea of lying beside her while his mind played back Liam's lines like a looped recording. Ally came out at midnight with a blanket in her arms, eyes red. You don't have to do that, she said quietly. Nate stared at the dark TV screen. I do. Ally hovered, then sat on the edge of the armchair across from him like a visitor waiting to be called into an office. I'm sorry, she said. I'm really, really sorry. Nate nodded once, not trusting his mouth. Ally's voice cracked. I never wanted to hurt you. Nate finally looked at her. Do you think people who hurt someone on accident write chapters about it? He asked. Ally flinched again. It was stupid. It was fantasy. Nate's eyes burned, but he refused to let tears fall in front of her, not because tears were weak, but because he didn't want to give her the comfort of thinking this was just a dramatic moment they'd survive with a hug. Fantasy doesn't have addresses, he said. Fantasy doesn't have same booth. Fantasy doesn't talk about perfume. Ally's mouth trembled. I didn't sleep with him. Nate held her gaze. Did you want to? Ally didn't answer fast enough. That hesitation landed like a punch. Over the next week, Nate's emotions came in waves. At school, he'd be fine until a student asked a simple question, Mr. Rowe, can you look at my outline? And suddenly his throat would tighten because outlines were what you wrote when you thought your life had structure. He snapped at a kid for talking during class and apologized 5 minutes later, confused by his own anger. At night, he'd sit in his car in the driveway, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the dark house like it was a place he wasn't sure he belonged. Ally alternated between frantic affection and cold defensiveness. One morning she made his coffee and kissed his shoulder like nothing had happened. That evening, when he asked to see her phone, she bristled. You're not my warden, she said. Nate stared at her. Then stop acting like someone with something to hide. She cried. She got angry. She pleaded. She promised. She said she'd stop tutoring. She said she already had. She said Liam meant nothing. She said Liam understood her in ways Nate didn't. Each sentence was a new bruise. Nate confided in one person, Marcus Hill, his best man, fellow teacher, the kind of friend who didn't flinch when life got ugly. They sat in Marcus's garage with 2 beers and a box fan pushing hot air around. Marcus listened without interrupting, jaw tight, eyes hard. When Nate finally stopped talking, Marcus exhaled slowly. "That's not tutoring," Marcus said. "That's an affair. Even if they never touched." Nate nodded. "I know." Marcus leaned forward. "What are you gonna do?" Nate stared at the concrete floor. And in that silence, the cold plan inside him became clearer. Nate didn't want revenge in the movie sense. He didn't want to humiliate Ally for sport. He wanted the truth to stand on its own, undeniable. Because Nate knew how stories worked. He was a teacher. He watched teenagers rewrite reality every day, excuses, half-truths, narratives built to protect themselves. He'd seen how quickly a person could turn "I messed up" into "you pushed me to it." And Ally was already doing it in small ways. "You've been distant lately. You've been stressed. You haven't been romantic. You don't understand what I'm going through." Nate could see the future forming if he let her control the story. She would become the overwhelmed bride who made a mistake, and he would become the cold husband who punished her instead of fighting for them. So he made a decision that felt like swallowing glass. He would keep moving forward with the wedding plans, outwardly. He would smile at relatives. He would taste cake samples. He would nod while Ally talked about napkin colors. And he would quietly gather every piece of proof he could. Not to destroy her, though it might. To keep the truth from being distorted. Over the next days, Nate worked like a man building a case. He took screenshots of the messages. He saved copies of the document. He exported the chapters into PDFs and stored them in a folder on a flash drive labeled, simply, "Truth." He also did something else, something that felt both pathetic and necessary. He met with a lawyer. Not a dramatic divorce attorney billboard kind of lawyer. A calm woman Marcus recommended who listened, asked precise questions, and confirmed what Nate already knew. Yes, the courthouse marriage was real. Yes, infidelity, emotional or physical, would matter in a divorce in ways that depended on proof and timing. Yes, it would get messy if he let it become a he said she said. When Nate walked out of that office, the air outside felt sharper. Like the world had edges again. At home, Ally tried to pull him back with tenderness. She cooked his favorite meal. She put her hand on his chest at night and whispered, "Please don't give up on us." Nate lay there, eyes open, and felt grief like a slow leak. He didn't scream. He didn't forgive. He simply said, "I'm not making promises." 2 weeks before the wedding, Ally announced that Liam was out of the picture. "I told him we have to stop," she said, voice trembling like she expected praise. "I chose you." Nate nodded, expression unreadable. Behind his back, Ally's phone lit up one night while she was in the shower. Nate didn't touch it. He didn't need to. The iPad on the couch chimed softly with a notification anyway. Liam K. One last chapter. Foreclosure. Nate stared at that line until the screen dimmed. He felt something settle inside him, heavy, final. That night was the night from the hook, the night Nate opened the document and saw just how far it had gone. He didn't confront her again. Not yet. Because the plan had moved beyond confrontation. The plan had become timing. The plan had become presentation. The plan had become making sure that when the truth came out, when family and friends were present, when excuses would sound thin, when Ally couldn't retreat into private tears and rewrite the story later, there would be nothing left to argue about. No misunderstanding. No, you're crazy. No, it wasn't what you think. Just her own words. Her own chapters. Her own choices. And whatever she did when faced with them, whatever she became in that moment, would be seen by everyone. Nate learned that betrayal doesn't always crash through the front door. Sometimes it slips in quietly, carrying a latte and calling itself help. He learned that a person can look you in the eye, talk about vows, talk about forever, and still keep a second life running like a hidden app in the background. Most of all, he learned something about himself. He wasn't the kind of man who begged someone to love him correctly. He wasn't the kind of man who let someone else control the narrative of his own marriage. On the Friday before the rehearsal dinner, Ally kissed him at the kitchen sink, hands on his cheeks, eyes searching. "I love you," she whispered. Nate looked at her, and for a split second he saw the girl he'd met years ago, bright, ambitious, laughing with her whole body. Then he saw the chapters. He saw Liam's words. He saw the booth, the perfume, the lipstick. "I love you too," Nate said evenly. Ally exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. She smiled, relieved. She didn't see Nate slip the small flash drive into the inside pocket of his jacket. She didn't see him glance at the wedding program on the counter, names printed in elegant script, promises arranged like decorations. She didn't know that the last moment was coming. And Nate, standing there in the ordinary light of their kitchen, realized something that made his stomach go cold and strangely calm at the same time. The hardest part wasn't discovering the affair. The hardest part was acting normal while he carried the truth like a blade. The week leading up to October 12th moved with a strange double speed. On the surface, everything looked normal. Ally called vendors, confirmed the cake, rehearsed the aisle walk with her maid of honor in the backyard. Nate attended meetings, answered emails from relatives, nodded along while his mother debated boutonniere colors like it was state policy. Underneath, Nate lived in a separate reality. He woke up each morning with the same first thought: this is happening. She is still lying. And went to sleep each night with the same last one: don't let her rewrite it. He kept his face steady. He kept his voice even. He kept playing the role of the groom who was simply stressed, the teacher who had too much on his plate. But inside him, every hour was another layer of grief hardening into clarity. Marcus checked in constantly, sometimes with words, sometimes just with his presence. He'd show up at Nate's house with a six-pack and sit on the porch without asking questions, like he understood silence was a kind of medicine. 2 nights before the rehearsal dinner, Nate finally told Marcus the full plan. They sat in Marcus's truck in the school parking lot after dark, because Nate couldn't stomach being in his house while Ally moved around upstairs practicing wedding day curls, like a woman whose hands weren't currently full of gasoline. Nate pulled the flash drive from his pocket and turned it over once, then twice. "I don't want to do some spectacle," he said quietly. "I don't want to be a monster." Marcus didn't blink. "Then don't be one." Nate stared through the windshield at the empty football field lights, dim and insect-attracting. "I'm not doing it to humiliate her," Nate said. "I'm doing it because she'll lie. She'll lie to my face, to her parents, to everyone. She's already trying to make it my fault." Marcus nodded slowly. "So you want the truth to speak?" Nate's jaw tightened. "Not me. The truth." Marcus leaned back. "What exactly are you thinking?" Nate exhaled. "The venue has a projector," he said. "They're doing this little slideshow after dinner. Pictures of us. Childhood photos. The usual." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Nate. I'm not showing porn," Nate said quickly, like he'd been accused. "I'm not doing anything illegal. It's words. Screenshots. Their own messages. Their own novel." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "How do you stop it from turning into you looking crazy?" Nate held the flash drive tighter. "I'm not going to talk much. I'm going to let it play. And then I'm going to walk out." Marcus studied him. "And what if she tries to stop it?" "She will," Nate said. "That's the point." Marcus's face hardened. "You want her to show herself." Nate swallowed. "I want her to distort herself. In front of everyone. So she can't clean it up later." Marcus looked down at the flash drive, then back up. Okay, he said finally. Then we do it clean. We do it fast. We do it in a way nobody can argue with. Nate nodded once, and it felt like signing a document. Marcus reached across and took the flash drive gently, like it was fragile. Send me copies, Marcus said. Cloud. Email. Everything. If anything happens to this, we still have it. Nate's throat tightened. Yeah. Also, Marcus added, voice low, you need to be ready for what comes after. People aren't going to react the way you imagine. Some will. Some won't. Nate stared at the field again. I don't care. Marcus's eyes softened. You will. But you'll survive it. Nate didn't answer. He didn't tell Marcus the part that scared him most, that even after all this, there were moments, tiny, stupid moments, when he still wanted Ally to come clean on her own, to collapse into honesty, to stop being someone he didn't recognize. But the iPad notifications hadn't stopped. Even the day before the rehearsal dinner, there was one more message from Liam. I can't watch you walk toward him. Not after everything you wrote. Nate saved it with the others. Truth didn't need more decoration. If Nate had only been engaged, he might have cancelled everything quietly, swallowed the deposit losses, told everyone it wasn't working out, and lived with the awkwardness like a bruise. But the courthouse marriage made everything different. On paper, Ally was already Ally Rowe. The wedding was supposed to be a celebration of what had already been done, a public ritual to match the private signature. And now, that public ritual was also the last stage where the truth could be shown in the open, before Ally could shape the story into something softer, something that made Nate the villain and her the complicated heroine. At times, Nate felt insane for going through with it at all. At other times, he felt eerily calm. Like he'd already crossed a line inside himself and couldn't go back. The night before the rehearsal dinner, Ally stood in their bedroom doorway holding a garment bag with her rehearsal dress inside. She looked tired. Her eyes had shadows that weren't there a month ago. Are we okay? She asked quietly. Nate, sitting on the edge of the bed tying his shoes, didn't look up immediately. He could feel her question hovering like a hand near a wound. We're functional, he said. Ally's mouth twisted. That's not an answer. Nate finally looked up. Her expression was soft, almost pleading. The version of Ally that had made him fall in love was standing right there, trying to be seen. But behind her eyes, he could still see the other version, the Ally who'd said, "You're being disgusting," when he confronted her. The Ally who'd asked for trust like it was owed, not earned. I don't know what you want me to say, Nate said. Ally stepped closer. I want you to say you're not going to blow up our lives. Nate held her gaze. I didn't blow it up, he said quietly. I just found the match you lit. Ally flinched as if he'd raised his hand. Her voice sharpened. So what, you're going to punish me forever? Nate's stomach tightened at the word punish. There it was again, the narrative forming. He stood, slowly. I'm not punishing you, he said evenly. I'm responding to what you did. Ally's eyes filled. I'm trying, she whispered. I ended it. Nate said nothing. Because he didn't believe that was true. Ally stepped back like his silence had shoved her. Fine, she snapped suddenly, emotion curdling into anger. Be like that. Just, be like that. She walked out of the room. Nate listened to her footsteps, then reached into his jacket pocket and felt the outline of the flash drive. He didn't smile. But something in him settled. By the time rehearsal dinner arrived, Nate had more than enough. The novel alone was devastating, pages and pages of intimacy, the language of falling in love disguised as creative writing, scenes that mirrored the coffee shop and the tutoring sessions and the late-night closure meetings. But Nate also had timestamps. Calendar entries. Messages that placed Ally in places she hadn't told Nate she'd gone. One photo Liam had sent, just a close-up of a woman's hand on his knee, a familiar ring on her finger. The ring Nate had bought. There wasn't a single smoking gun photo of sex. There didn't need to be. The affair was a body made of words, and it was alive. Nate kept everything organized like lesson plans. Not because he enjoyed it, because he couldn't survive the chaos otherwise. He also kept one final piece separate. A paragraph from the novel that wasn't fictional at all. It was written in Ally's voice, like a journal entry inside the story. I'm going to do it anyway. The wedding, the pictures, the vows. I can't disappoint everyone. And I can't lose him. Nate is safe. Liam is electric. Maybe I can keep both, just long enough to figure out what I really want. Nate read that paragraph so many times it felt burned into his retinas. He didn't need more proof than that. The rehearsal dinner was held at the venue's barn, strung with warm lights and decorated with wildflowers in mason jars. It smelled like barbecue and champagne and autumn leaves. People laughed. Parents hugged. Aunts cried. The wedding party clinked glasses. Ally floated through it like a bride in training, smiling, kissing cheeks, thanking everyone for coming, performing joys so well that if Nate hadn't known what he knew, he might have believed her. Nate stood beside her like a mannequin. He smiled when required. He shook hands. He posed for pictures. He avoided alcohol, because he needed his mind sharp. Marcus watched him closely, like a guard. When dinner ended, the event coordinator, an upbeat woman with a clipboard and a headset, approached Marcus. "We're ready for the slideshow," she said. "Do you have the file?" Marcus nodded and handed her a flash drive. Nate's heart did something strange then. It didn't race. It slowed. Like his body was bracing for impact and decided the best strategy was stillness. The lights dimmed. People quieted. The projector whirred to life. A familiar photo appeared first, Nate and Ally at the beach, sunburned and smiling, her head on his shoulder. A collective awe rose from the crowd. Nate heard Ally exhale beside him like relief. Then the photo faded. A title card appeared, in simple white letters on black. A love story, in their own words. The room laughed lightly, assuming it was cute, poetic. Ally tilted her head, confused. Nate didn't look at her. The next slide appeared. Not a photo. A screenshot. A message thread with Ally's name at the top. The first message was innocent enough. "Ally, I'm seriously bad at this. Like embarrassingly bad. Liam, no shame. We build." A few chuckles. Some people still thought it was a joke, maybe a "how we met our wedding planner" bit. Then more messages appeared. Faster now. A sequence. "Ally, it's easy to feel brave when I'm talking to you. Liam, then keep talking to me." The laughter stopped. The air turned heavy. A woman at table 3 whispered, "What is this?" Ally's body went rigid. She turned her head sharply toward Marcus, eyes wide. "Marcus," she hissed. Marcus didn't respond. The slideshow continued. A title card. Chapter 1, Us. Then excerpts from the novel. Not every word, not pages, just carefully chosen lines, the load-bearing bones of it. Liam, write a different one. Write us. Ally, I shouldn't. Liam, you already are. A few gasps. Someone's chair scraped loudly as they shifted. Ally's face drained of color. She looked at Nate then, horror and fury colliding in her eyes. "Nate," she whispered, voice trembling. "Turn it off." Nate kept his hands at his sides. The next slide was the paragraph Nate had saved for last. The one where Ally admitted she wanted both. The room read it in silence. Nate could feel it, the collective processing, the split second where people tried to fit what they were seeing into the version of Ally they'd been given. Ally made a strangled sound. No, 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 she said, shaking her head violently. She lunged toward the coordinator's laptop near the DJ booth. Marcus stepped in front of her instinctively. Ally shoved him. Move, she snapped, voice suddenly sharp enough to cut. Gasps turned into murmurs. Ally, beautiful in her rehearsal dress, hair curled, eyes wild, looked nothing like the sweet bride anymore. She looked like someone caught. Nate, she shouted now, louder. What the hell is wrong with you? Nate finally spoke, voice calm but carrying through the barn. What's wrong with me, he said, is I married someone who thought she could keep 2 lives and call one of them help. Ally's breath came fast. She looked around, frantic, searching for an ally in the crowd. Her mother stood frozen, hand over her mouth. Her father's face was a thundercloud. A bridesmaid whispered, "Oh my God." Ally pointed at Nate like he was the criminal. "You violated my privacy," she screamed. "You're sick." A ripple of confusion moved through the room, some people flinching at the volume, at the venom. Nate didn't raise his voice. "I didn't hack you," he said. "You left it on the shared iPad." Ally's eyes flashed. "Because I trusted you." The irony hung there like smoke. A low, incredulous laugh came from someone, Nate didn't even see who. Ally heard it and snapped her head toward the sound, face twisting. "Oh, so now everyone's laughing," she shrieked. "Yeah, great. Laugh. You don't know anything about our marriage." Her voice rose, frantic and angry all at once. This is because you've been cold. Because you don't touch me like you used to. Because you're always tired and stressed and acting like I'm just another student you have to manage." Nate felt something inside him go perfectly still. There it was. The distortion. The public rewriting. The "you made me do it" performance, live. Nate watched faces change, people who had been uncertain suddenly recognizing the shape of manipulation. Ally kept going, digging her own hole with both hands. "He's a tutor," she shouted. "He helped me. And yeah, maybe I got close to him, because I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to feel seen." Her maid of honor stood up, trembling. "Ally, stop." Ally rounded on her. "Don't tell me to stop." She spun back to Nate, eyes blazing. "You wanted to humiliate me," she hissed. "You wanted to make me look like a monster." Nate's voice didn't shake. "I didn't make you say any of that," he replied. "You did." The slideshow, still running, landed on the final slide. A simple line. "I can still taste you." A sound went through the room, half gasp, half groan. Ally's face crumpled, then hardened into rage again. She reached for Nate, like she might hit him or grab him or cling, she didn't even know which. Marcus stepped between them immediately, palm out. "Don't," Marcus warned. Ally stared at Marcus like he'd betrayed her too. "This is insane," she spat. "You're all insane." Then she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit, shoving past a startled aunt. As she passed her father's table, he stood. "Ally," he said, voice low and shaking. "Sit down." Ally didn't stop. Her father's voice cracked, louder now. "Ally, sit down." She froze for half a second. The entire room watched. Ally turned slowly, eyes bright with tears and fury. "I'm not a child," she snapped. Her father's face twisted in pain. "Then stop acting like one," he said. That sentence landed like a slap. Ally's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, she looked small. Then she turned and ran out into the night. The barn was silent except for the projector fan. Nate stood in the center of it all, breathing like he'd just surfaced from deep water. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt hollow. People reacted in fragments. Some rushed toward Nate, his mother, eyes wet, hands trembling as she touched his arm like he might disappear. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "Oh, Nate." Some stayed seated, stunned. Some looked away, uncomfortable, as if betrayal was contagious. Ally's mother started crying openly, shoulders shaking. The coordinator hurried to shut the projector off, face pale. Marcus stood beside Nate like a pillar. Nate's body finally started to shake, just a little, delayed adrenaline. He felt nauseous. He also felt an odd relief, like something heavy had been put down at last. Nate walked outside into the cooler air. The venue's gravel crunched under his shoes. Crickets chirped like nothing had happened. Marcus followed. They stood under the string lights hanging between trees, the kind of romantic lighting people paid thousands for. Nate stared up at them, blinking. "I thought I'd feel something else," Nate said quietly. Marcus didn't press. "What do you feel?" Nate searched for the word. "Grief," he admitted. "Like, it's really dead now." Marcus nodded. "Because you stopped pretending." Nate swallowed hard. Inside the barn, someone started arguing, voices raised, likely Ally's parents and someone from her side trying to salvage dignity. Nate didn't go back in. He pulled out his phone and saw missed calls already, Ally's name, repeated. He didn't answer. Not because he wanted her to suffer. Because he knew the next step of her story would be private, tears, apologies, bargaining. And Nate didn't trust himself not to fold if she cried the right way. He needed distance to stay sane. That night, Nate stayed at Marcus's place. He lay on a guest bed staring at the ceiling while Marcus's dog snored at his feet. At 3 a.m., Nate finally cried, not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears leaking into the pillow. He cried for the version of Ally he'd loved. He cried for the future he'd pictured, kids, holidays, summers at the lake. He cried because even when someone betrayed you, you still mourn what you wanted them to be. In the morning, he woke with a headache and a strange calm. His phone had 27 texts from Ally. They ranged from fury to pleading. "How could you do that to me? You ruined everything. Please answer. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. Nate, don't throw us away." He read them all once. Then he texted one line back. "Do not come to Marcus's. I will contact you through a lawyer." His hands didn't shake as he sent it. That, more than anything, told him the truth. Canceling a wedding is messy. Canceling a wedding when you're already legally married is a whole different category of mess. The next 48 hours were a blur of phone calls and logistics and heartbreak conversations. Nate called the venue first. He kept his voice professional. "There won't be a wedding Saturday," he said. The coordinator's voice was gentle. "I'm so sorry." Then the vendors. The caterer. The DJ. The florist. Each call was a tiny funeral. Then he called his parents. His mother cried. His father's voice went cold, protective. "I'm coming over," his father said. Nate told him no. Not yet. He needed to handle Ally first. Ally, meanwhile, tried everything. She showed up at Marcus's house once, uninvited, mascara streaked, hair pulled back, looking like a woman who'd slept in a car. Marcus didn't let her in. "You can't do this," she cried through the screen door. Please let me talk to him." Marcus's voice was flat. He said no. Ally's face twisted into anger. "So he's hiding," she snapped. "He can humiliate me in front of everyone but he can't face me now." Marcus didn't flinch. He faced the truth. "You ran from it. Ally's mouth fell open like she couldn't believe someone had spoken to her that way. He set me up, she hissed. He made me look. Marcus cut her off. Ally, you did that yourself. Ally's eyes flashed, then filled again. She sagged, suddenly exhausted. I made a mistake, she whispered. I didn't deserve this. Marcus's expression didn't soften. You made choices, he said. And he deserved better. Ally stood there for a long moment, then stumbled back to her car. Nate watched from a back window, hidden, heart pounding, not with longing, just with the fear that if he saw her too clearly, he'd forget why he had to leave. The lawyer appointment happened 2 days later. Nate sat across from the calm woman again, sliding documents across her desk like he was handing over pieces of his life. I want to file, he said. As soon as possible. She nodded, clinical. We can begin. Nate hesitated. Will the messages matter? They can, the lawyer said. Especially if there's dispute over assets or if she contests anything. It also matters for negotiation leverage. Nate stared at the table. I don't care about punishing her. The lawyer's eyes were steady. Protecting yourself isn't punishment. Nate nodded once. The next step was the hardest, returning to the house. He went when Ally wasn't there, with Marcus and his father present. Not because he needed muscle, because he needed witnesses. The house looked the same. That was what made it surreal. Ally's shoes by the door. A candle on the counter. Wedding invitations stacked like ghosts. Nate walked through rooms touching things lightly, like he was in someone else's life. He packed essentials. Clothes. Books. His grandfather's watch. His laptop. In the bedroom, the garment bag with Ally's wedding dress hung in the closet. Nate stared at it for a long time. He didn't touch it. He didn't zip it. He just closed the closet door gently, as if not to wake it. When he left, he felt like he was walking out of a museum exhibit called What Could Have Been. Ally called him that night. He let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through the speaker later, raw and shaking. Nate, please. I know I messed up. I know I did. But you doing it like that, ruined me. You ruined me in front of everyone. She inhaled sharply. I'm not saying it wasn't wrong. It was. But you didn't have to destroy me. Her voice lowered, suddenly sweet, dangerously familiar. I love you. I do. And I know you love me. Please don't let one thing end our whole life. Nate listened to it twice. The first time, it hurt. The second time, he heard what was missing. She didn't say, I betrayed you. She didn't say, I'm ashamed. She didn't say, I'm sorry for what I did to you. She said, you ruined me. That was the final nail. Nate deleted the voicemail. In the weeks that followed, Nate moved into a small apartment closer to school. It smelled like fresh paint and emptiness. He bought a second-hand couch and ate too much takeout and slept too much or not at all. He went to work anyway. Teenagers, with their loud lives and immediate problems, were oddly grounding. They complained about homework. They worried about homecoming. They laughed at stupid jokes. Life kept insisting on continuing. Ally's name still appeared in his notifications sometimes, emails from lawyers, requests for documents, attempts to negotiate. Each time, Nate felt less like a husband and more like someone closing out an account. Some people told him he was harsh. A few of Ally's friends whispered that he'd made it public and that was unfair. Nate didn't argue with them. He didn't need them to understand. He had watched Ally try to rewrite reality in real time, in front of a room full of people, and he knew exactly why the truth had to be shown the way it was. Because betrayal thrives in shadows. Because cheaters don't just cheat, they often edit. They edit history. They edit your reactions. They edit your right to be hurt. They edit you into the villain so they can stay the hero of their own story. Nate learned that love isn't just affection. It's loyalty when no one is watching. It's honesty when lies would be easier. It's choosing your partner even when the electric option walks in and offers you a second life. And he learned something else, something he never would have said before this. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop trying to be kind to someone who keeps hurting you. On a quiet Sunday in November, Nate sat on his apartment balcony with a cup of coffee and watched the trees shed leaves like they were letting go on purpose. Marcus sat beside him, legs stretched out, beer in hand. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Nate took a slow breath. "I'm not, okay," he said honestly. "But I'm not confused anymore." Marcus nodded. "That's something." Nate stared at the bare branches. "If someone ever asks me what to do," Nate said, voice quiet, "I'd tell them this: don't let the person who betrayed you control the story afterward. Don't let them turn it into your fault. Get the truth. Save it. Protect yourself." He paused. "And also, if your gut starts whispering that something's wrong, don't call it paranoia just because you love them." Marcus lifted his beer slightly. A silent toast. Nate didn't feel victorious. He felt older. He felt scarred. But he also felt like a man who had stepped out of a burning building and refused to pretend it was only smoke. In the end, the wedding never happened. But the truth did. And in the moment the projector light filled the barn, Ally had tried to stop it, tried to twist it, tried to turn it back on Nate, only to reveal herself in front of everyone. That was the thing Nate would carry forward, not with pride, but with certainty. He didn't destroy their life. He simply refused to keep living inside her edited version of it.